When we study micro and small firms, a clear a problem has been identified for years is the lack of cash, the cash availability. That's when they lose the cash, run out of cash, immediately that means companies go to bankruptcy. And investments on these are always making the difference. Companies, when they are small, they always wonder, should I invest in an ERP system? Should I invest in hiring another person? Should I focus more on sales? Should I buy another machine? And that decision makes a difference whether they stay or not in the business. Now, plenty of the recommendations always come in the management of cash, like cost control practices. What are you doing there? Focusing a lot, in the practices of growing the customer base, and this is typical. You go because also this comes from the entrepreneurship mindset. When you are building your business model, understanding the consumer, doing market validation, really growing the sales as much as you can makes a difference. Right? Now, what we have found out is that while this is still very relevant, it still is not at the top of the priorities. The priority are two main practices, supply chain practices. One relates to managing quality, and the other managing delivery, we call it, or fill rate. So let me explain this a little bit more. So when companies are in this stage, they have survived, they have, at least being in the market at least 2 years and are operating, let's say 3-4 years, or even longer, they start struggling and say, okay, so what do I need to do to survive, and keep my business? So first is companies that focus on growth have 5 times more chances to survive. So they start growing. It's okay, I need to grow. So what are my chances to grow? So for instance, if I have just in Latin America, typical, stand of tacos or whatever, it's just in the street, right? And then has people. They say, okay, so now I have collected sufficient money and I want to buy, or rent an establishment, a fair establishment where I can actually have more customers and have them seated and, So there is an investment in growing the capacity, right? So you say, because that capacity is going to also help me grow my customer base. So they make an investment. So first risk, if you don't get the money back soon, you go to bankruptcy. So that risk, right? The investment, the return on investment, and also the time that it takes to get it back. But let's say that you have calculated this. The second is, now that you grow, it turns out that the question is how you're going to prepare the tacos. Before it was only you, but now you need to have 3-4 cooks that are going to also do the same process. And you need to guarantee that the tacos are the same. And this sounds very silly, but it's actually key. Like, you hire another person, how do you guarantee that the quality is going to be the same? Because if the consumer comes and tests and they says, this is not the one that I'm expecting, that's it. Now, once you have the tacos and you say, well, I train all of them and I pay attention to managing the quality of my tacos. Now the delivery, before you will give it to me immediately. But now what if not? What if you actually take a different process and makes it cold? And then when they come cold, if you're Mexican, you hate the cold tacos. But it's just to give you an example. This happens almost in any level, right? I'm talking about restaurants, when they grow, but also the mom and pop stores. Same thing, right? Understanding, what the consumer wants. What are your consumers? How do you manage the quality? And how do you manage the delivery, the fill rate of your product? Once you can control that part, then the next stages are related to paying attention to the cost control and customer base. But these parts have explained plenty. We have a study. For the last 3 years, companies that have focused on practices of managing quality and managing fill rate, and it turns out that they have had a steady growth in the last 3 years. What companies that neglected this have actually have a decrease in the last 3 years. So this explains a lot, right? Like there are more practices related to keeping records, etc. But focusing on those things, once you understand how to invest in the capacity or the customer base management or the cost control, can make a difference on a company to really survive or not. Now, this is just to give you a glimpse. There are plenty of other, conditions in this research that are mainly affected by the business, the sector, in which part of the supply chain are you? Are you tertiary, focusing on services, or you are in transformation in manufacturing, or you are in extraction? So different models work here, but this is part of the results that we have obtained with the research in the last 3 years for the Genesis project.